All right, well, welcome everyone. While we're waiting for everyone to join, we're going to be giving some chapter updates. We are here in person with Alisa Schulman-Janiger for our very first speaker series of the year. We have all of our naturalist class attending here in person and members from all our different chapters online. So I'm going to have to hand this over to Diane and to Patty for updates from their chapter. Go ahead, guys.
Hi, I'm Diane Glim with the Monterey Bay chapter, and I'd like to welcome everyone and thank the Orange County chapter for putting this on. So excited to hear about Alisa tonight, celebrating her 40 years. And I wanted to make a big announcement about the Monterey Bay chapter. We've been on a hiatus and we are getting back into action. So I will keep you posted on that, but we're really excited that we're getting active again. Thanks.
Hi, I am Patty Farrell. I'm with ACS LA, and thank you, Orange County, for putting together this wonderful webinar series. We appreciate you, and we are happy to be here. Thank you for everybody from LA who's attending, and OC and Monterey. We're happy to see you here. We have two announcements. We have two things coming up. We have a Meet the Board Whale Watch, which is happening on March 1st. 10 a.m. out of Redondo. You can find information on it on our Facebook page and our homepage of our website at acs-la.org. And then we are actually, I don't think we've put it out yet, but March 22nd, we're going to do a marine mammal care tour in San Pedro. So that should be fun. And we will be getting that information onto the web very soon. So I am going to introduce Alisa. We are super excited to have our very own Alisa Schulman-Janiger presenting tonight. She is a valued member of our board of directors at ACS LA, and she has been on the board since 1983. So Alisa is a marine biologist, cetacean researcher, and educator. She's been the director and coordinator of the full-season shore-based ACS LA Gray Whale Census and Behavior Project off Point Vicente since 1984. So that's 40 years we have, and we are in our 41st season now. Alisa is co-founder of the California Killer Whale Project and is their lead research biologist. She's been photo identifying California killer whales, archiving sightings, and studying their distribution, natural history, and behavior for over 45 years. She's a research associate at the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles County. She's an instructor for Cabrillo Whale Watch program, training naturalists. She's a naturalist in whale watch boats in Southern California, has been a researcher and naturalist in Monterey Bay, Alaska, Massachusetts, and Baja California, and has been a NOAA staff scientist and marine mammal observer on cruises from Alaska to California. She's a responder for the NOAA California Trans-Stranding Response Team and the Large Whale Entanglement Response Team. Alisa taught marine biology, advanced marine science, and biology in San Pedro High School Marine Science Magnet for 21 years. She was the head marine biologist educator on LAUSD's Sea Education Afloat for 10 years. Alisa has authored and co-authored many papers and presentations on killer whales, gray whales, humpback whales, and pilot whales, as well as killer whale and gray whale photo ID catalogs. So for those of you who know Alisa, you know you're in for a real treat tonight because she is truly a wealth of information and knowledge. And with that, I want to thank Alisa so much for coming to present tonight, and I will turn it over to her now. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We're just going to take a second to switch our microphones around and make sure that you guys can see and hear Alisa as she presents. So Patty and Diane, I'm going to go ahead and mute you guys if you want to take your videos down too. And then I'll be spotlighting Alisa. Patty and Diane, if you don't mind giving us a thumbs up after we turn on Alisa's mic, just so that we know that you can hear her.
Can everybody hear me okay? Yes, right. Yay.
Okay, I'm just going to spotlight that view so everyone can see you while you're presenting. You want to try advancing the slides as well? Perfect.
All right.
Get out of your way. Thank you guys so much.
Okay. Hi, everybody. You're welcome. Yeah, I'm really glad to be here. Exciting. I've talked here several times before and I always enjoy doing it. Two of my big projects, my favorite interests in life are the ACSLA Graywell Census and Behavior Project. When I started this full season project in 1984, I did not think I'd still be doing it this much later, but it's really wonderful, staffed by citizen scientists. And with killer whales, I've been interested in those ever since I could remember. And the interests have kind of come together, getting to see killer whales from Point Vicente and all over the place. So I'll be sharing a lot of this. I'm also a storyteller. I'm used to being on boats. I taught on boats before. I was a naturalist who went into the classroom rather than being a teacher who just happened to teach marine biology. So I may tell a lot of stories on the way. I'm very visual. I include a lot of pictures. So hopefully you guys like a lot of slides. Almost all of them are photos I've taken over the years. If they're not, I credit the other folks. So these two here are a couple of my favorites. If you have any questions, please hang on to those. I love to answer questions. And no question's a dumb question unless I just answered it and you weren't listening. Otherwise, all good. So here we go. So whale watching from shore. Our project is research, but also education and helps contribute to conservation. And I really love this cartoon showing whales watching the people and people are busy watching the whales. The Graywell Census and Behavior Project, this is our 41st season. We're the longest running full season Graywell census in the world, all staffed by citizen scientists, trained volunteers, and I'm the marine biologist with the project, the principal investigator for it. We operate from the Point Vicente Interpretive Center and have been doing that ever since 1985. Started out at Marineland of the Pacific and then had to leave February 11th, 1987, the day Marineland closed. And I may throw out a lot of dates to you. The numbers are something that just sort of stick in my head and I recall this pretty easily. That's just the thing. Numbers and pictures. Names are tough for me. I was a teacher in the classroom and the hardest part of teaching in the classroom for me was remembering the kids' names. If they moved around, then my spatial map was messed up. If you have a dorsal fin, I'll remember you no problem. Okay, so Cabrillo Whale Watch are people who staff the project have come from Cabrillo Whale Watch. They've come from runners who just happen to be running by literally. People have heard about it on the radio or have seen it on TV or whatever. We have a lot of people who have been with us for over 10 years, some for over 20 years, some a couple 25 or 30 years. We operate about 12 hours a day, pretty much every day. Up until a couple years ago, we had never missed a day, ever. And then we had the rain that never stopped. And then we had the winds that never stopped. And then last year we had the mudslides that never stopped, it seemed like. And Palos Verdes started moving around. A lot of you might know about that, all the sliding, and it was a little scary. So last season we were open for 170 days, a total of 1,990 hours, and almost 9,000 effort hours contributed by about 100 volunteers. 11 core volunteers, including myself, contribute over 200 hours each per season, which is almost a 6-month season, which accounts for about 32% of our effort hours. So every single shift, which typically has between 4 and 6 people on it, is staffed by at least one person who's an anchor person who has a whole lot of experience identifying the animals and so on. This year we have about 13 new observers with us. So the history of our Graywell census, John Olguin, who started Cabrillo Whale Watch, was a lifeguard at Cabrillo Beach. I actually met him when I was 5 years old on a field trip to the old Cabrillo Marine Museum and hatched grunion eggs. And I always wanted to be a marine biologist, but then I decided I had to be a crazy teacher like him and a marine biologist. And he was talking about dancing like a grunion, which I later did in my 20s, didn't realize it was that same crazy guy from the beach when I was 5. It was like I shrunk up again and I was that little kid looking up at him. So he started it from Point Furman when people would walk by and ask about whales right above the port of Los Angeles, and they'd count whales, put it on a chalkboard and erase it. So all that data's gone, but a lot of people got interested and got the project going. And then Marineland of the Pacific, a friend of mine, Bill Samaras, a teacher of marine biology at Carson High School, He started Census at Marineland of the Pacific in front of the pilot whale tank. I don't know if anyone here ever got to go to Marineland before it closed, but we were right in front of the pilot whale tank counting gray whales about 85 feet above sea level and counted quite a few. In fact, our first year we counted 3,412 between January and May, and there were only about 18,000 whales, gray whales at that time. And they all came close to shore. Over 90% were within a mile of shore, had no days of fog, no days of high wind. And I thought this will be easy. And it's the only year that was like that. So I got hooked and I thought, oh, how come we're not seeing that anymore? So this last year, we only had 500 plus gray whales going northbound. So we were there until 1987 when they closed down at noon. They said, we're done, that's it. Trainers hopped in the water. It was horribly sad. We had our only humpback whale that we'd seen in 3 years, breached 7 times. We call it that our goodbye whale. And a lot of things have changed over the years. Now we see more humpbacks and species diversity is a lot different. We used to see pilot whales all the time then. Now we don't, for example. And then Catalina Island and Santa Cruz Island, we were out there for several seasons. Catalina for 2 different seasons. We are no longer there. Well, number one, we had bald eagles nesting near us. And bald eagles versus the whale watchers. They re-inhabited the nest. We were taking notes on them between the whales. We saw one male bald eagle came and gave his girlfriend a fish, or he was going to do it, and then he took it away and ate it, and they broke up. And we were watching all this social life of the bald eagles there. But also there's a lot of wind, and there was a lot of rain, and one of our volunteers was in a tent and it started rolling on the hill. And then another guy got out to go roll after him and catch the tent. And we'd have the buffalo like pushing over the supply tent. And it was really interesting. I thought it was my snorting neighbor, and it was like a buffalo in the camp. Anyway, very interesting on Catalina Island. We saw quite a few whales out there. In fact, we saw more whales out at Catalina than we saw at the mainland. They tend to go offshore going southbound, and more of them tend to go close to shore going northbound. So really indebted to these 2 wonderful men who got our gray whale census going. So we're at Point Vicente, which is just due north of Catalina Island. And we could see whales going mostly from where we're at. We can mostly see the whales as they're coming across Santa Monica Bay going south. So we can watch them for quite a long time, sometime a couple hours going south. This morning, it was only 9 minutes. We had 2 gray whales, and by the time they popped up right in front of us and got past us, it was 9 minutes for each whale. Going north, we don't see the whales till they come across this cliff, and then they're going away from us. So it's tougher to track them because they're not coming toward us for us to be able to count them and get good visuals and maybe try to take pictures of them. 138-foot elevation is our patio. And so I've seen whales out 7 miles from there, but we certainly can't see them by Catalina Island. Very extensive kelp beds near shore canyons. So January 1st, we had a sperm whale right at Point Vicente. Was our first whale of the year. It's the first time that happened. Seen sperm whales before, but never the first day. And so there we are on the patio of Point Vicente, which has hosted us since 1985. And we have the cliffs drop off close to shore there. Hopefully we won't get any closer to shore with the sliding of the famous landslides there. And absolutely gorgeous. Great office view here. There we are where the red is right there. And sometimes we actually hear whales before we see them. So here's a whale pictures I got from a boat looking at our census folks watching a gray whale go right by. You could see 2 gray whales going between our post and the Point Vicente lighthouse. So we're counting the whales as we're trying to estimate how many there are. We're not trying to see how many gray whales there are because most of them actually are out behind Catalina Island right now. But we're looking at trends and at timing of the migration, at percent of calves that we see and other species we see, and collaborate with multiple other researchers on all kinds of projects, which I'll be talking about too. So our field of view is really nice here, this panoramic view. We can see at 160 degrees to 320 degrees, all the way from Point Vicente to Point Dume. And our transect line would be right in front of us where the whales approach most closely, which was less than a quarter mile this morning. A view to the south and then a view to the north across Santa Monica Bay. So we call ourselves the people who count. We're educating the public, come from all kinds of background, nurses, students, you name it. We have somebody who's been in that profession. All of us use 7x50 binoculars that have built-in reticles and compass. So we're not just saying it's over there or behind the third pelican, or look at that wave, it's right there. So we can actually tell each other. Now, back in 1987, April 87, when we first bought these nice Fujinon binoculars, we used to have a compass. Like, I'd see killer whales and I'd say, look at the killer whales, they're over there. And I'd have to look at the compass and line everything up, and I'd be missing the killer whale breaching. So now we can look through our binoculars. Several of us have spotting scopes to help verify ID, to look for unusual things like markings on gray whales. In one case, I thought we had one gray whale. As they came across, could see we had two. Then I could see we actually had three, and one had a big white spot, and one had orange patches, and one was very dark. But when you saw them, you could see one was underwater, and they never surfaced at the same time. We actually had four. So the scope can really help us do that, and also help us identify calf presence, for example. Calves are really hard to see, particularly southbound. So we're counting them, looking at distribution, migratory, timing, behavior, interactions with each other and other species, calf recruitment, and anything that can interact with people, such as being entangled or boat harassment, things like that. So things that we collect could include the times that we initially see them, the transect, and the final one. But we keep on notes all the different points where the whales come up, so we could plot those later if we want. And on a good old days when we used to see 100 a day, 1987, we had 827 whales in 8 days. And that was 1/3 of the entire northbound migration. It was like no whale seen, no whale seen. And everywhere you look, you're going to see a whale like popcorn all over the place. So it's really, really different. But you might have, say, 9 sightings out. Plus, you might have a sighting of fin whales and a sighting of humpbacks and dolphin too. So you got to keep them all straight. So we have an anchor person or note taker who people are calling out the readings of sighting number 1 or number 2, and they're keeping it all straight in columns. So you're not double counting anybody, for example. Oh, and then we also do weather. That's really important. March 1985, we had 100-something whales, 100-something whales, and 4 whales. And then 90 whales. What happened that day? Did they suddenly not come anymore? We had fog. We were able to see the water 5 minutes. We heard blows all day long. And in those 5 minutes, we counted 4 whales. So the weather's super important. Wind, fog, glare on the water. There's rain, for example. All kinds of things could affect the weather. This year, we had to close 2 days because of the fires. We could not be out there because of the air quality. I was there on the 3rd day, which was a Friday, and we had to close partway through the day when the smoke just came up and it wasn't safe to actually be there. So we want to be out there as much as we can. I've been out there when there's gale force winds coming. It's hard to keep me away from there. When there's lightning, everybody drags me away and says, no, you can't stand out and watch all the whales and the lightning. But one day we had, it was a big gale day. We had 94 northbound gray whales and 7 southbound gray whales that day. And that was exciting. There was like whales everywhere you looked. Not seeing that lately. Fog is usually our biggest problem. Last year, there's a lot of fog, a record number of days of fog, 71 out of 170 days. Previous season was usually 58 to 62 days in which we have at least part of the day has some fog there. This is an example of, oh yeah, it's bright and sunny. And then you get there and you can't see the water, and I got a hummingbird in this nice picture, but didn't see any whales, not until the afternoon. And we have days that we have gale force winds. It was not going to stop blowing, so I just told everybody to stay home. When you're trying to move this way and the wind's blowing you the other way, that's not a good day to be whale watching. I have an umbrella, which is weatherproof there, absolutely weatherproof. Bought it from a weather place. Okay, guaranteed not to go inside out. Yeah, right. Okay, it did. And rain, all kinds of things, rainbows, just beautiful. Okay, so to get into some of the meat of this, we have different populations of gray whales. We have 2 existing ones, 1 extinct. Eastern North Pacific gray whales are the ones we are studying. There's around 19,000 of them, which is the median of a 95% confidence interval that NOAA Fisheries does counts between December and February of southbound whales that travel close to shore. And they take those counts. They do not count any of the times in which the wind was over a certain amount, the visibility was under a certain amount, there's fog or so on, and they discount those, and then they fill in the holes with averaging the other stuff. So last year, the estimated population was estimated to be around 19,000. The previous year, it was closer to 14,600. And that means they increased 7.2% in a year in which we had almost the lowest number of calves. So we're really interested in seeing what happens this year because we think there were issues with those extrapolations because there were so much holes in the data because of the really, really poor visibility conditions. And they were removed for endangered species list back in 1994. They're still protected. Western North Pacific, there's about 250. They're a success story, actually. There used to be close to 100. They're considered critically endangered. Now they've been downlisted to endangered, which still isn't good, but it's better than critically endangered. And about 250 of them, they satellite tagged about 10 of them back in 2010, and all of them crossed the Pacific, which no one expected any to do that. And several tracked partway down the coast. And one Varvara actually went down to the Baja Lagoon. She's 8 years old and she went and visited all the lagoons, went back to Russia, and the tag lasted over 360 days, longest lasting tag ever. She went back feeding in Russia. None of them went down Asia. None of them went down that way. And they were traveling with each other. So we think they actually mated with each other as they come across. And then they mix in the lagoons, but the genetics are separate. So it's super interesting stuff. And North Atlantic population's been extinct since the 1700s. Well, a couple of years ago, I put this picture up on our Facebook page every day. I do summaries, putting up photo of the day. And the very last cow-calf pair we had, which was number 83 that year, May 16th, I posted this picture of this whale, and I only got 2 pictures of the whale. And I saw later that there was actually a calf right here in the picture, in the couple of pictures that I got. So I was very excited, cow-calf pair. And then a Russian researcher contacted me and she was even more excited and said, can I send you a PM? And she messaged me and said, that's one of our Russian whales. And we didn't even know it's a female. We've only seen her 3 times since 2011. There's 2 different groups working together, but we can't believe you put that on you saw a Russian whale, and we were very excited. So anyway, that's the only Russian that I have photographed off there. And so that contributed to their research, and that was super cool. So the Eastern Pacific gray whales, which are the ones that we're studying, they go along our coast here. And of course, there's Westerns with them. Then after some of these Westerns saw that they were going down the coast, they took the top Western gray whale photo ID specialist and had her look at Baja Lagoon pictures. And she's like, ours, 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 ours. And then she was seeing all the Russian whales are in the lagoons, which is really interesting. Primary summer areas of feeding, Chukchi and Bering Seas. Along the migration route, there's a subset of them, about 230 whales called the Pacific Coast Feeding Group. And they typically feed primarily between Northern California, down to central Northern California to British Columbia, particularly around Vancouver Island, where there's 100 to 120 of these gray whales feed off of there. And also Canada, Washington, Oregon. And over the years, I've contacted some researchers from there, and I have a couple people lurking on my Facebook page, seeing if any of their whales pop up. And this year has gotten very, very interesting. Our gray whales go along the coast here. The primary route is offshore during the northbound migration out here. So my friends who were out by the Channel Islands saw a couple gray whales, 3 gray whales out there. I heard today commercial fishermen, saying quite a few gray whales on the backside of Catalina. This year, the gray whales are late. We're thinking, did they all die off? What happened? We are at our lowest count we've ever had in 41 years. Last year was the lowest count. We're less than half of last year. Did they all die? What happened? And then we heard they're back here. And what happens, basically, to give you just a preview, is that if the gray whales spend more time feeding, either because they're not finding food or they found a lot of food, then they may come late. And they've been late for about the last 6 years. And this year they're later than ever. But we found if they're late, they tend to travel faster when they hit Southern California. And they tend to cut through, do the shortcut. Instead of going, oh, I'm going to do a harbor tour and another harbor tour. The mating parties are down here. They're like heading down the coast as quick as they can to get to that. They're also mating on the way. Most can see them on the way south. The males will be looking for anybody to mate with. They hop over all the lagoons looking for females. So I was on one of my NOAA research cruises in 2015. We specifically went to the Pacific Coast Feeding Group areas between British Columbia and California, photographed a lot of whales, and published a catalog of those Pacific Coast Feeding Group whales. So saw quite a few of them. And for photo ID, we use the sides of the whales, the knuckle pattern, that when the whale is arching the highest, these are the pictures you should shoot for. For gray whale photo ID, we look at the pigment pattern on the side and the shape of the knuckles and presence of scars and so on. We also look at the flukes too, dorsal and ventral, but mostly these side views are like gold as far as gray whale ID efforts. So Pacific Coast Feeding Group, one of the most famous gray whale of all, her name is Scarback. I've seen her from shore 4 times from our gray whale census. She's somewhere between 1978 and 82. She either had, some people say it was a harpoon wound from Russia up there, or it might have been a boat strike. But she has had lots of kids, and she's been seen multiple times. She had calves in 1995, 2001, 2004, 8, 14, 16, 20. Gray whales don't go through menopause. Pilot whales do, killer whales do, false killer whales do, belugas do, narwhals do. Not gray whales, not humpback whales. They can keep having babies every 2 or 3 years, sometimes every year, until they die. From the time they're as early as 5, but usually around 8, and then every so many years. One whale, Daisy, she was the most popular whale in Hawaii. She had 10 babies in 12 years. That means she's nursing and pregnant at the same time. So this whale, you can, just looking at some of these dates and matches, 2017, she was off of Depot Bay, Oregon. And then I saw her off the Census, December 2017. She was off Dana Point, January 2018, and then off Bikini Head in Oregon, 2019. And then Dana Point on Point Vicente again in 2019, another photo that I got of her from shore. And in April 2020, this was closed down, pandemic, COVID time, but one of our participants went to Point Vicente and he photographed her with a newborn calf right here. That's not a northbound baby. That's a few days old. So she may have ovulated in October, November, and then maybe ovulated again, and maybe she just did again for fun. And she had this little, got pregnant late. They will mate all year round. They don't get pregnant all year round. But she did definitely get pregnant late. They're pregnant about 13 months. And people in Oregon were so excited when we posted this, that Scarback, they're famous. This is like the celebrity of all of Oregon. Everybody, Scarback's here, Scarback's here. Depot Bay, Oregon, August, and where she feeds on mysid shrimp. She hangs out there the summer and she goes up to BC. And then again in 2022 in Depot Bay. So just kind of tracking them by their photos, not with a tag at all. So this Pacific Coast Feeding Group, last year, almost the same date, January 16th, took a photo, posted it of this whale. And one of my friends said, hey, and I think he's on right now. Hi, Era. That's one of our whales. This is Sleepy. So we photographed Sleepy. And Molly Batts, she's with Newport Coastal Adventure now. She was with Harbor Breeze. Cruz has got a picture of her and matches, and that was really exciting that we got that whale. And then came this year. And this year I've been making a big effort to take photos. We've had so few whales. 19 matches so far, out of a population of maybe 120 or so, coming from British Columbia Feeding Group, which is a very high percentage, considering we can't photograph all of them and some are far from shore. 19 confirmed matches. This whale is Luna. She was seen December 5th off Dana Point, going south. Then she was photographed January 10th, going north. In fact, we've seen 3 different groups of northbound whales, and all of them have been Pacific Coast Feeding Group whales, which is super interesting. Maybe coming down early because they're feeding further south, and maybe going back, or maybe just hanging out and foraging. So on the bottom here, they forage mainly between California and BC. They're actually smaller. They're physically different than our gray whales that aren't in this subpopulation. Somewhere between 210 and 250, depending upon who you talk to. 232 is a number I heard a lot. And half of the Pacific Coast Feeding Group whales are very well known to researchers and whale watchers, that they'll say, oh yeah, I saw Luna, I saw White Spot, whoever it happens to be. So it's become kind of an obsession now with me. Like I'll call my Census folks and, did you get a picture of it? Did you get a picture? And we know a couple of drone guys who will go out and try to get pictures too. So just a couple quick examples. This is December. I got a picture of this whale, and my friend, let's see, which friend was this? This is Mark up in Vancouver Island, who works up there, BC. He said, I know that whale. And so on the bottom, on the left there, that's his photo. And on the top is my photo of the same whale. So that was real cool. And so the winner of the matching so far is Crosshatch in the upper right. December 6th, going south off Dana Point, Dana Wharf Whale Watch. December 11th, going north. We photographed her. December 17th, going south, Dana Wharf. So the question is, do we then look through all of our pictures and subtract those whales, and they don't really count if they went this way, that way, this? We have to count them all because you can't go back and do that with all the past data. That's super interesting. And Patty is there in the back, got a picture of one we're calling Mama because don't have a nickname yet. But this whale had a calf in 2023, and she got gorgeous pictures of this whale that matched up to their whale that's not officially in the catalog yet. So it's ongoing story. Here's a whale called Saddle, also known as Hembra, who's the most famous gray whale down in the lagoons. And she has been seen since 1977. And since then, she's had 6 known calves. She's also been in Ojo de Libre too. And she's at least 53 to 55 years old from her sighting history and her calf history. And they didn't put a tag on her. She got her own birthmark. Beautiful white blotch on there. So I saw her in Ojo de Libre, and cool whale to look for, and she was seen last season. Typical diving pattern. How many of you have seen a gray whale before? How many of you have not seen a gray whale before? Hopefully this year. Hopefully this year. Okay, so gray whales will blow 3 to 5 times. Usually some of them don't read the book and they blow 8 or 10 times. They dive 3 to 5 minutes, but they can dive over 25 minutes. 25-minute is the record, and that was a female who was tagged, not harassed. She was in the lagoons. She was a mom, and she just happened to hold her breath for 25 minutes. So I'm sure they can do it for longer. That's a typical diving pattern. They have a blow that can look heart-shaped from the back in particular, or from the front. They have some interesting markings sometimes. On the side, mostly birthmarks. They often have killer whale tooth rakes, where a calf might survive a killer whale attack, or a mom could will be attacked while she's trying to protect her calf. And some have deformities, like this whale, Quasimodo, who I saw way back when. That was our first matched up whale. I think that was 1992 that we had her. I saw pictures of her in a conference in May 2nd. And May 5th, I saw her off of the port of Los Angeles. And she was seen like February 16th without a calf, February 19th with a calf in Baja. Then she went into the lagoon, into San Diego Bay. And then she was seen off our area. And she looks very odd, swims really slow, but she was the first whale that had been matched up through natural markings. Breaching's our favorite behavior. Not yesterday, this was yesterday, a couple of weeks ago yesterday. Forgot to change the date of that. But this is actually a whale from shore. I photographed that from shore, from the Census. That's my favorite shore-based breach. They usually don't look that way. Behaviors that we might see include spy hopping, milling, circling, kelping. They can roll in the kelp. They also will pull animals off the kelp, such as these amphipods, the lion-headed nudibranch. There could be little fish in there, kelp crabs, all kinds of things that are good for them to eat. One juvenile gray whale hung out behind San Miguel Island for 4 months, feeding in the kelp, just pulling it through their mouth. In fact, they could prey on over 85 different species. You might have heard they like to eat amphipods mostly. These chimerid amphipods that live on the bottom, make little tubes, little homes down there. And that's really good as long as you keep going back to the same area and the gray whales plow the bottom of the ocean, lying on their right side, sucking up that mud. And then if you have a warm water event or climate change that's heating up the water, these guys die. And you go there to go like pull vegetables out of your garden. There's no garden anymore. So you got to go looking for some more vegetables someplace else. It's really tough, especially when your vegetables can swim around. And there's krill would be, and mysid shrimp, and zoea and megalops crab larvae, and ghost shrimp. There's all kinds of things that they can eat. I've seen them eat copepods too. They feed on the bottom. About 85% of them feed on the right side. So we're biased to taking photos from the right because it typically has more markings on them. Some of them are left-lipped. And Just imagine you curling up your tongue. I can't show you because 75% of people can, and I can't. Give me $1 million and it won't matter. I don't have that gene. This gene is tongue rolling, tongue curling. Some of you can make little flowers with your tongue. I can't do that. But gray whales do that, and they could help suck that in that mud substrate there and sift it out through their baleen. And for several years, we had them feeding in the port of Los Angeles during unusual mortality events, which I'll be talking about. So gray whales feed on the bottom, except when they don't. Gray whales are generalists. They have medium-sized baleen, and they can feed on all these different prey. And they're not supposed to lunge feed, but here's one lunge feeding on krill in Monterey Bay. And another one that it was swimming with was skim feeding like a right whale. I know they don't do that, but sometimes they do. So that's really cool when you see things that divert from, dare to be a little bit, do your own thing, fly your own flag. That's fun. Okay, behaviors observed, we might see mating, courtship, rolling around. We saw a birth off of Point Vicente, January 26, 2016. Dolphin were jumping around. A gray whale was waving its flukes high in the air about 1.5 miles from us and then gave birth. And the baby, we didn't see the baby coming out, but then we saw him going across like this, and the calf's flukes were folding and unfolding. And this is a baby that was barely born when I first came across it in the fog, and it didn't know how to swim, and the mom kept pushing it up so it would try to breathe through its blowholes rather than its navel, which wasn't being successful. The flukes were all curled up. That was really cool. Not my photo, great photo of a newborn gray whale in Monterey Bay. Colleague of mine, Dave Rue, he actually photographed a newborn calf up in Alaska, December 4th, many years ago. That calf would not survive down the coast. Some years we think that over 40% of our gray whale calves might be born north of Carmel, perhaps. So our southbound calf count has been anywhere from 3 to 106. This year we haven't seen any at all. Last year by this time we had 19. The moms are really low profile. They don't want to show much of their body. The calves are very hard to spot. So I hope we'll get to see one soon. There was one seen off the oil rigs last week. They often come close to shore. Megapods. We saw the biggest gray whale group recorded. I heard there were sperm whales, went out and hopped on a boat, went out to see all these sperm whales, and I was so disappointed because the blows went up. How did sperm whale blows go? To the left and a 45-degree angle. I was so disappointed. Almost got a parking ticket. They held the boat for me. And then I saw how many blows there were, and then I got really excited. And I photographed 23 different whales, 19 different flukes. There were at least 23 different whales there. Told my friend Melissa down in San Diego, there's this huge group of gray whales going by. And so she was looking for a big group of gray whales, and 18 hours later, she found a group of over 20. And she got 10 fluke shots, and 9 of her shots matched mine, which is super duper cool. Since you don't typically do gray whales with flukes. And then I was going by to talk to our whale watch class about this when I passed my friend Diane Alps at Cabrillo Whale Watch, who had a picture of a gray whale from the lagoons on her laptop. And I went, wait, that's one of the whales. That's one of our whales. So we got 3 matches there, 2013, 2012, from interesting markings on the gray whale. So it's both dorsal and ventral fluke as well as the sides of the whale. Boat strikes. We have seen near strikes. We have seen whales we have actually saw whales swim into a gill net and did not make it back in March 1985. So this is really scary. Speedboats, photographed whales with propeller scars on them. This is the same whale on the right that has prop scars, 24 scars along the back, just got run over by a boat. This whale is super interesting. The one on the top here, it's got killer whale tooth rakes. It's got prop scars, and it's also got an alien. It's got little tiny markings here that nobody could figure out what it is. I only know of 3 whales that have had it that look like a little alien stepped in paint and walked all over the whale. Very, very odd looking. Still don't know what it is. And the whale on the bottom is actually harpooned, was harpooned by a whaler. Talked to some whalers who said, yeah, that's what it looks like. Explosive harpoon either went off too early or it was too far away. I know of at least 3 different gray whales, and that's one I saw many years ago. So it's harpooned off of Brescia and survived. Threats are entanglement. We've seen whales become entangled. We have a marine protected area, MPA, in front of us. We have a whole line of lobster trap buoys out to the side. They are not supposed to, nobody's supposed to fish in the area in front of us, and these whales have to go through, and occasionally you see the traps start moving around. Then a really weird contraption on this whale. Must have been feeding on the bottom and then got this on it. People were saying, just go out there with a blowtorch, you know, just cut it off the whale, save it. The whale's not going to hold still for a blowtorch. And this whale had been entangled and freed itself, and it's been seen a couple of times, almost lost its flukes. This is the whale I was talking about that swam into a gill net, was with another whale. They swam in circles for 15 minutes, and this whale came up a couple days later. Fishermen at the time were saying, but it's pink, these are pink. So the whales could see them. Gray whales can't see pink. Right whales can. Right whales can see red, but gray whales cannot. Entanglement alert. This is a good thing to take a picture of and record this. 1-877-SOS whale. If there's a whale entangled, do not jump off a boat with a knife in your mouth and say, I am going to save you. And jump on the whale and have your friend video you and then upload it. Don't do that. Don't cut off a trailing buoy, because that buoy could be the only thing that tells us that whale is entangled. Okay, you cut it off and we can't put on satellite tag. We can't put on gear to help free that whale. You just cut off the sign that says, I am entangled, help me, and think, oh, look at what I did. And meanwhile, it's got line through its mouth it could never eat. So please don't do that. Do call for help. Do take pictures of it. Do record it. Do take video. Don't get too close, because you could spook the whale. And when the rescuers come out, then the whale won't let them get anywhere close. So NOAA, we have got a trained entanglement team that knows how to respond and what to do. Seen flukeless whales. Okay, whale's supposed to have a tail. This whale was in a mating group off of Baja, March 84, when I was a naturalist for a trip there, and had the ugliest bi-hopping head I ever saw that was missing a mouth and missing its eyes. And actually always would come up and turn hard to the right, corkscrew to the right. It would use this side to move itself because it doesn't have anything here. So it would come up and corkscrew like this and go down. We've seen them from the census, no long-term survival, but many months. This particular whale, March 5th, 16th, March 20th, that's the same whale, and it was seen from Orange County all the way up to Big Sur area, and then it came up on shore and did not make it. This one's got a fancy kind of a cut in here, and these are basically from becoming entangled, and it cuts off the circulation and the flesh dies. It's not from a ship strike. Ship strike's going to hit it, it's going to cut off the tail, it's going to bleed to death, die of shock. It's something that slowly cuts it, and then this erodes away, erodes away, erodes away. Okay, so we don't want that to happen. Nets are a big problem. Okay, over half the humpback whales I see, they have entanglement marks on their flukes. So summary for some of our numbers that we have here. This is our educational whiteboard we have out every day, talk to the public. We had, as of yesterday, 45 southbound gray whales, add 2 for today, and 3 northbound, and a total of 48. And this time last year, it was more like 120. And last year, again, was the lowest southbound we've ever had. Last season, we ended up with 225 and 575. 225 is the lowest southbound we've recorded. 575 is the second lowest northbound. And we did have cow-calf pairs, though, last year. We're really hoping we see them soon. On the bottom's many other species, like fin whales we've been seeing a lot. Blue whales, not yet. We haven't had a lot of blue whale sightings the last few years. Blue whales eat krill. If you have krill around, you might see blue whales. If you don't, you'll be lucky if you see any, because they're around to feed. Humpbacks, fin whales, they could switch from krill to fish. So you might see for either one. Common dolphin, we see them pretty much every day. Bottlenose dolphin, and almost every day. Pacific white-sided, not so much the last few years in our area. Rhesus dolphin, we've seen them twice this season, including a couple days ago. Sperm whale, beginning of the month. And then we keep track of birds where we normally have like other unusual species of cetacean might be there right now, keeping track of some fun birds. So how does the season compare to others? 2 thumbs down. Okay, not so good. So in December, you could see this season is the one in red. It started out better than the average. Actually, this is a 9-year average, considering we had a year and a half we weren't there because of COVID. And then it dropped, and the numbers just started dropping. And how does it compare to the whole season? Not so good. Not so good. Late migration, and it never picked up. Very, very, very low. This is the average for 9 other seasons. So why do we think right now? Well, it's too early to really say, because the southbound migration goes to the middle of February. But what I think, what I know, is that it's a very late migration. How do I know? Because everybody I talk to up and down the coast says it's late, they're not here, we have fewer whales. The lagoon people are saying hardly ever any whales. People on the boats are saying, where are the whales? Whale watch operators, have you seen a whale? And fishermen out by Catalina are like, here are the whales. So we're not seeing the whales. So when they come late, they tend to go offshore. And there's fewer gray whales because there was a big mortality event that we lost from estimates, 1/3 to 1/2 of the gray whales, the whole population. So looking at the previous year, you could see how the line of last year looks bad, but not as bad as this year, but it did start out slow and then picked up. So last season, comparing it to the others, we had, those are the numbers right there. And you could see how southbound, we see fewer gray whales. Northbound, they tend to come closer to shore. Also, we're watching for more hours a day too. And during the middle of February, we could see whales going both ways, which is the blue and the red. Looking at our numbers through across all the years, you could see there's highs and lows. The gray whales have dropped before. Previous unusual mortality events, drop down, but each time they've recovered. Okay, they may have dropped to a fairly low amount, like almost half of the gray whales last time, and then they had recovered over 15, 20 years. Looking back, we think this happens periodically. Every so many years, there's a cycle in which there's something that impacts their prey. Typically, it's warm water because the amphipods cannot survive high temperature rise. So they have to switch to something else and go many hundreds of miles further and maybe feed longer because they're not finding the swarms that they typically do. Much easier for me to open this drawer and get a snack out than have to go all around the block trying to find some snacks that someone might have hidden in a box someplace in somebody's yard that I don't know where the box is or how many snacks there are, or if I'm going to like those snacks. Okay, so it's tough for them and it might take them a long time. When they come by, they might be skinnier. So the ups and downs are really interesting, southbound, northbound, kind of mirroring. And then for the calf count, you could see how that's pretty interesting. So the calf counts over the years, this year had a really high calf count. Really high calf count. We were doing great 2016. We had so many calves and then boom, and not so good. What did we have? An unusual mortality event. Gray whales couldn't find enough food. They're really skinny. They're emaciated. If you've got a starving woman, she's not likely to pop out a bunch of kids. She can't survive. She can't nourish the kid. There you go. Skinny whales, ice coverage on the feeding grounds. They can't get to the food. Too much ice, not enough ice. The water gets too warm. And algae on the bottom of the ice falls down and feeds their amphipods. You don't have the ice, you don't have the amphipod food, you don't have gray whales that are nice and fat. So unusual mortality event, 98 to 2000, another one recently, 2019 to 2023. What did we have? Strandings, skinny whales, not many calves. So how do you tell you have a skinny whale? Whale's supposed to be fat. You shouldn't be seeing scapula. Okay, you shouldn't be seeing ribs on a whale. You shouldn't be seeing outline of the cranium, skull. Okay, so these whales are emaciated. And I've only seen pictures of one emaciated whale this year. It was off San Diego. Its ribs were sticking out. Healthy conditions. Behind the head should be a fat pad. This whale's in fair, okay condition. It's got its scapula showing here, but it's not a great big dip. This is what we want to see. We want to see a triple wide whale, maybe pregnant, which we're hoping for. So peeking at the lagoons in San Ignacio Lagoon, Steve Schwartz did his work starting in 1972 there. And you want to pick out last year, it's in red. And see what happened last year? So they came late, peaked early, and the total counts were not high, and the whales left early. Came late, left early. I need food. I'm staying up and eating. I got to go back and get some more food. Last year was the lowest calf count they've ever had. We're hoping this year is higher. And another overview, gray whale calf production, very high estimate in 2004, 1,643. I sure wish I could see 1,643 calves. 2016, it was estimated, this is from NOAA's northbound census, which happens at Piedras Blancas in March, April, and May. That's when the cow-calves are coming close to shore and they could see all of them to count them. 2022, the UME, unusual mortality event, when we started seeing these strandings and skinny whales happened 2018, we started seeing it. 2019, it was declared a big problem. 2022, the gray whale population had dropped by a lot, and so did the calf count. In 2023, that was the lowest point it's been in a long time, 14,500. But the calf count was somewhat higher, so we felt, well, at least there's some improvement. And last year, I talked about estimate was higher. calf count was almost a record low. So what'll happen this year? Well, we still need to find out, but it's not looking so good right now. We'll see. Poor body condition, gray whale population dropped to half. It's 50%. We lost 50%. If you lose 50%, you're not going to be counting as many. And there were lots of carcasses washed ashore. About 4 to 13% maybe of dead gray whales are ever located. They have to die close to shore and then wash up where you can get to them. Okay, I'm sure there's a lot that died at sea too, so it's a real underestimate. But now the strandings are back to a number that's considered within normal, and fewer skinny whales, so the unusual mortality event was declared ended November 2023. So what did we see during this? We had a late southbound migration, early northbound migration, lots of skinny whales, fewer calves. What they see in San Ignacio, the yellow in here, most important, they got to the lagoons late, they had fewer babies, they had more skinny whales, and they left early. Same trends. So what are we seeing this year? Late migration, likely due to extended feeding season. We don't know yet if that's because they couldn't find the food and had to work harder, or food was everywhere, so they stayed to fatten up. We can't tell yet. 20 years ago, they were 3 weeks late one year. 3 weeks at the end of the UME was because the food was everywhere. And so everybody was 3 weeks late. They went to lagoons 3 weeks late, but they didn't leave early. They stayed, and they left 3 weeks late. So we have to see what happens later on. Too early to tell. Boom and bust cycles, exactly what I was talking about. So the different kinds of things we might see here, all of these things on this card are possible. Go through some of them. Typically encountered common dolphin, bottlenose, Pacific white-sided, minke whales, killer whales. I wish killer whales were more typically seen, but not enough. Humpback whales, fin whales, rhesus, and blue. Early years, we did not see humpbacks. We did not see blue whales. We did not see dolphins every day. It's quite different now. Sperm whales, pilot whales, northern right whale dolphin, false killer whales, and Dall's porpoise. These are less frequently seen. Furry folks, the California sea lion, harbor seal, northern fur seal, northern elephant seal, southern sea otter. Interactions with other species, gray whales interacting with white-sided dolphin, for example, fin whales swimming with false killer whales. So going through some of the more common species that we see. So last year, out of 176 days, 76 days, yeah, no, 170 last year because we were closed. 170 days, we saw the common dolphin on 147. Most of the ones we see are the longbeak form, which was separated into 2 different groups in 1994, 2 different species, and it was lumped back together because of discrepancies on how the data was analyzed, and it's being reanalyzed and more specimens collected, and I'm sure they're going to be separated again into 2 different species. But we see mostly the longbeaked. Shortbeak we have seen close to shore, but not as often. But these are the ones we see every day, including 3 groups this day. Today we had mixed group of offshore bottlenose dolphin and common dolphin. The bottlenose dolphin, we have the inshore type that's right along the kelp beds. We have offshore type that's further out. Last week, incredible, over 300 offshore bottlenose dolphin. Spread everywhere from the cliffs all the way across the field of view, and every single one was inside like a rooster tail, a big spray of water. Took some pictures to make sure that's what it really was, because I never saw a whole body. They never leapt out of it. Every one had its own accompanying white cloud of water. It's amazing. Everywhere you looked for long time. It was exciting. The day before there was over 200, and there was a boat that went out and got the same estimates as we did. So how many of you have seen a bottlenose dolphin? 300's a lot of offshore bottlenose. I wish my camera could have gotten pictures of all those. Too far out though. Actually saw a birth observed in 2008, 2009. They made a birth circle like Dennis Kelly here, one of my mentors too, documented with their heads facing in and one in the middle going like this. A baby popped up. I've seen it with Pacific white-sided dolphin. It's real exciting, and with rhesus dolphin. And bottlenose dolphin, who I really hope is still around but suspect is not anymore. Leucistic patches was last verified February 2023 and has never been gone for that long a time. And I know is a very favorite of here, and I've seen multiple times. Been seen for many years, and very unusual looking. Sure, it's male, calves never been seen. Very large. Males are bigger than females for all toothed whales except for a couple beaked whales, and has been seen up to the northern Channel Islands down to San Diego, and again hasn't been seen. I'm not going to say did yet, but hasn't been no carcass seen, but Fingers crossed. Pacific white-sided dolphin, not seeing them very often, 10 days, 12 days. Some years we see them a lot more often. They tend to increase. They used to, when we see a lot of white-sided dolphin, and we call lags for Lagonorhynchus obliquidens, their scientific name. If we saw a lot of lags, we didn't see many rhesus. If we saw a lot of rhesus, we didn't see many lags. Now we're not seeing many rhesus and not seeing many lags. So I know our white-sided dolphin shift south. So out here, if you see 25 white-sided dolphin, that's a nice group. If you see 50, that's a real nice group. You go up to Monterey, it's like 50, try, 2,000. They have big groups up there, and same thing with the rhesus too. Speaking of rhesus, average size out here maybe is about 40. Up there could have a couple of thousand. Casper, the white rhesus dolphin from Monterey, was photographed in the Channel Islands last week. So that was real exciting, and no one had ever documented that before. It was the first time ever documented until it was posted on social media, and then 3 or 4 companies said, wait a second, we've seen him out here. We just never talked about it. So yeah, apparently 2022 was seen in Channel Islands, so watch out, maybe here too. Blue whale, fin whale, can see them close into shore even. Blue whales with the tiny little fin way back with the speckles on it, fin whales with the bigger fin further up. And 2023, 24, we saw quite a few fin whales. We've got some resident fin whales off our area. They don't migrate down to Mexico. They move inshore, offshore, and we see certain individuals like fluky. Fin whales don't fluke unless you're fluky. Plus like 3 other fin whales I've seen fluke. So really interesting how certain individuals we'll see over and over and over. So the trend for blue whales is decreasing. In 2012, we had a La Nina year. It was super cold and there were blue whales everywhere. 5 people called me, told me to get to the local park. You got to go see all the blue whales out there. 5th person, I'm like, okay, I'm in the car. It's 5 minutes away. Park my car. Somebody walks by, said, do you see all them whales? Got out of the car. Someone else walked by and said, do you see the whales? And by the time I got to the cliff at Point Furman, like 5 people had stopped me like, did you see the whales? They're big, it blows. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm so excited. I counted, how many did I count that day? Oh, so many blue whales. I think I had 39 blue whales or so and 45 minutes. And I had my binoculars. I could tell they're separate. And it was estimated by John Kalbakidis with Cascadia Research Project. There's estimated over 250 between Santa Monica and Newport at that time. They were everywhere. It was in end of August. It was so exciting. I think it was August 23rd. It was very exciting. Big day, big day. Fin whale, this is Fluky, who flukes. They say they don't fluke, but yeah, she does. Female, no, she's not a hybrid. She's been biopsied. Pure fin whale, just likes to fluke. Okay, we had him, the biggest year was 2012-13. We saw him 138 days out of 171, which is amazing. Mar Ecotel, which is a research group I work with all the time. Take pictures from shore boats and send my friend Erin pictures of the fin whales. And they're the ones that hold the catalog for fin whales. And she could tell me, yeah, that's 961. It's been seen way back when. They've identified at the time I had done the slide, that's a few years back, 588 fin whales, 59 with high residencies, and 8 have been seen year round. So on one trip on my birthday several years ago, I saw 3 fluking fin whales and none of them were fluky. So she's got 2 that are here that regularly fluke. And Brutus and sei whales, I used to say, we hope to see them one day. We've seen Brutus whales, right, Patty? We've seen Brutus whales out here. They have ridges on their head. They look like funky fin whales, but they've got 3 ridges on the head. They don't have white on the lower jaw. It's dark. Here's a picture of, quote, a fin whale that I saw in a catalog, a UCI picture, I think, but it has a dark lower jaw, and this is a well-known Brutus whale. And also sei whales. This is a sei whale I got when I was working in Massachusetts for a couple of years, a picture of a sei whale with cookie cutter shark bites on it. And so I always got to say, boy, one day I hope will we see them, and some of these fin whales just might be them. And then twice last year we saw some whales that were definitely not fin whales. They're too far away to, their fin goes up and then back. Fin whales goes like this. Sei whales and Brutus go up and then back like that. They were definitely up and back. And verified 100% they weren't fin whales. They were either sei or Brutus. So if you go out in boats, make sure you know you're sei and Brutus. One time we saw a sei whale mixed with 3 fin whales. They were all feeding together, so not necessarily on their own. Humpback whale. This is a humpback I saw off Port of Los Angeles back in 1990, where none of the naturalists knew what it was because no one ever see a humpback. I heard pygmy sperm whale. I heard all kinds of names thrown out. I'm like, what are you talking about? And it was a humpback whale right off the harbor, first time documented, I think. And we had them hang around for a while. These here, black rakes and mom chompers. Chompers feeds like this, like the old Pac-Man. And black rakes feeds like same thing. And she has 3 kids that we know of, and 2 of them do the chomping thing. And Chompers has a calf out there this year that was doing that too. So that's pretty cool. She also had a kid with her longer. Black rake stayed with her for a year and a half, longer than they usually do. They usually wean about 9 months later. Exclamation point. That's a cool looking whale. How many of you share your pictures with Happy Whale? Get a fluke shot, and now they're doing dorsal fin IDs. They're doing sperm whales. They're working on some killer whales, all kinds of things. Take a picture of underside of a fluke and send it to happywhale.com, and they'll send you emails and identify your whale for you and tell you if it's new to science. Like Batman, who's a male who goes to Baja and romances lots of females down there, and also known as cut fin. Some of these have multiple names depending upon who you talk to. This one had a bad entanglement that I could see all the way across the bay from Monterey and be able to get the ID of that. And they have maps, and get your name in there, and they'll let you know where your whale's been seen. It's the biggest citizen science project. It was using AI, one of the first to do that, and expanding in a dorsal fin ID. So it's way cool. So send in pictures of the dorsal fins too. When we have an entangled humpback whale, we may never see the fluke. If you get a picture of the dorsal fin too, then we might be able to see who it is, because we couldn't ever see the fluke because the fluke's being held down by all that gear. So those are important to turn into, not just flukes. Minke whales, not too often, but you know what? They're out there all the time. They're tough to see, don't really see the blow. They don't fluke, they don't breach too often. And when they breach, they do a good job of it. But they look like a single dolphin, like a big dolphin. But we have them out here. There's only about 400, maybe, up and down the coast between here and Washington. They're the ones that the Japanese whalers targeted for a long time. They could feed on fish or krill, and they could gulp 6 times before they come up at once. They've got a smaller mouth. They have these white flipper patches. They're way cool. Sperm whales, we saw them several times, 2021. We used to see them all the time. One male called Double Scoop, this guy, all the time. 1982 to 1991, fed in our canyons, this guy here. Close to shore, up and down, we'd see him multiple days. That's a picture I took close from shore, and a friend of mine who was a marine biologist who actually has written several books thought this was a fake picture because sperm whales are never seen close to shore, unless they are. We have a near shore canyon. It's obviously near shore, and there you go. So we're getting repeated sightings and getting to know some of these individuals. Mango, named it because John Calabakidis was eating a mango and first saw a mango there. And he was seen from 1996 to 2013, was satellite tagged back in 2010, and the tag kept working till it almost hit the Galapagos by the equator. So these can travel quite a bit, particularly the males traveling around. And now we have this really cool male. In fact, we have multiple whales, but this one here is named Papaya in honor of mango, keep the fruity theme, but has this little notch right there. And that one's actually been photographed up in Monterey Bay. So that's pretty cool. And false killer whales, don't see that often, but usually the week around March 13th to March 18th, March 21st is a time when we have most frequently seen them, starting in 2014. How many of you remember the warm blob? When the water got really warm and we got seahorses off here and pufferfish and triggerfish and yeah, false killer whales and eastern tropical Pacific killer whales too. Northern right whale dolphin, Dall's porpoise, and pilot whales don't see too often at all. They're excited to get to see them. So moving into California Killer Whale Project and studying killer whales off California. I've been doing that ever since I could remember. Actually, it was Dennis Kelly who got me hooked as far as photo ID. I'd always been interested, but he was giving some talks at Southern Cal Academy of Sciences and was showing pictures of killer whales, and both of us were sketching their fins, and I was identifying different whales seen in different places. We actually have different kinds of killer whales out here. Probably some different species, but they're all put into one species as of now. The one we most frequently see nowadays is the Biggs, which some people call transient killer whales, but named after Mike Biggs, who was the first one to realize that killer whales can be individually identified by markings on their dorsal fin and in their saddle. So we see them in California, all the way from the Mexican border. Some of them, 4 of them, been seen up in Alaska. Offshore killer whales who are shark eaters. And they were fairly recently seen in Monterey, at least 60 of them. Eastern tropical Pacific killer whales coming up from Mexico. That's not a type of killer whale. It's all the killer whales that live south of Mexico in the Eastern tropical Pacific. It's like saying, what do you eat if you live in Europe? Okay, there's different kinds of killer whales down there, but there might actually be certain ecotypes and maybe separating the species later. They have a different look to them in general, but there's a lot of variety. And they definitely like to eat dolphins off California, and apparently one little gray whale. The LA pod, which is what I always used to see. We always used to see them between January 5th, 82 and December 4th, 1997. We saw them. They came in on an El Nino and they went out on an El Nino. And I don't know where they are now, but this is one of them. This is CA1, first whale we named for our killer whale catalog. Really narrow saddle, really notched up dorsal fin. Very small whales. They look big to me till I saw my first bigs. Bigs are big. LA pod, not so big. And they're shark eaters and sea lion eaters, and I think squid and fish eaters too. So they're sexually dimorphic. You could tell boys from girls at the time they're about 9, 10 years old. The male's fins start to grow, their pectoral flippers get really big, their flukes start to curl down. Or if they swim upside down, the female has a wider white area with 2 mammary slits, except for the female who doesn't have the black spots on the mammaries. We have one female who does not. And males have a long, narrow, wider area, typically without the mammary spots on there. The males are larger, have taller fins, bigger pecs, and they tend to be mama's boys for the big killer whales. They stay with their mom their whole life. In California, we have only one male who actually left his mom. In British Columbia, quite a few males will leave their moms, particularly if they have more than one son. Often the younger son will leave. Females are smaller and they weigh less and they have smaller fins. Sometimes we don't know if they're female until she gives birth, or don't know that it's a female until gets to be 15 years old, like, okay, your fin hasn't grown, you must be a female. So looking at the bottom here, that's what I'm talking about. So you can actually tell if they go upside down or breach, and be able to tell if they're male or female by those markings on the underside. We always get really excited and yell like sex shot, and people turn around and go, what are you talking about? It's like, what's going on? Humpback whales, females, who knows what a female has? If you're a humpback whale, a hemispherical lobe, a round sort of ball on their belly that only females have, and they're born with it. Okay, so if you see that swelling, that's a female. Anyone know what adult common dolphin have? A postanal hump. When they hit sexual maturity, they get a swelling here, only the adult males. First time I saw that, I went, is that a tumor? And the tumor was always in the same place, and it's only in adult males. And all common dolphin do, both types. Otherwise, you can't really tell easily at all. So it's really exciting when they turn upside down. Okay, killer whale life history. Gestation is about 17, 18 months long. They can usually be born, tail first, but they can be born head first. The calves, they can have up to 7 calves. If they have 7 calves plus, they're called super moms. We don't have any super moms verified in California. I suspect a couple. The youngest mom was 7 years old in captivity. The youngest in the wild was 10, and we have a 10-year-old mom dipper. She had her first baby within this last year. In fact, we have 10 new babies this last year. Our big killer whales are doing really, really well. The oldest mom was a northern resident, 48 years old. They're usually expected to enter menopause around 42, 43, kind of like humans. Very high calf mortality, particularly if you're a southern resident and have pollutants involved in the blubber. Mom makes milk from blubber. Baby gets a whole bunch of pollution along with the milk dinner. Females live longer than males. Females could probably live into their 80s or 100s, males to the 60s. Most of our males usually die young in their 20s and 30s. We don't have many old males at all. Again, menopause, matriarchal, mom leads the group. You might see a male and a female. It's most likely to be a male and his mom. He's not like the king or the leader of the pack, not at all. The females are the leaders, always, 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 always. And they teach their kids, they pass a lot of stuff through culture. Nurse their calves 1 to 5 years, and the milk's about 30% fat. Fat content about 6% at birth, about 43% if you're almost a year-old calf. So it changes, the amount of fat content changes, and it can have pollution in it. So with all this work that we did, in collaboration with my researchers, friends from Monterey area, And also from Mexico, we put together a catalog that we're working on updating right now of the killer whales of California and Western Mexico, a catalog of photo identified individuals. We're up to over 200 now of these big killer whales, and about 45 families or so matriline's. Females grow up, have kids, and they leave their mom. And then you have a new matriline, you get branch off. So we have some of them that are multiple generations. Some are still traveling together, some not. Many forms of killer whales around the world. And again, it's all one species now. I bet within 10 years, it's going to be multiple species. There was some really good data suggesting there should definitely be southern residents as one species, bigs are another species. And it was turned down by a very tiny vote by two people who were authors of the paper, excused themselves from voting. And if they had voted, they would be different species now. And the evidence is there, but it will take probably several years before it's re-examined, more data and so on. There's probably over 100,000 killer whales in the world, a lot up off Alaska. So the main kinds of killer whales we see out here are the residents that have a curve, they look different. Curved fin with the flat on the back and can have black intrusions in the saddle. Big groups, they talk a lot, they eat fish. Bigs tend to have pointy fins, bigger saddle that goes way forward. They're quiet when they hunt, and they're small groups. Offshore killer whales, they eat fish. They're chatty. They have rounded tip fins. They like to eat sharks, like sleeper sharks, seven-gill sharks, blue sharks. Pelagic killer whales, which are part of the big population of right now, may end up turning out to be another completely separate population. Need to get some genetics on them, get vocalizations on them, but can have very wide saddles, very narrow saddles, often cookie cutter shark bites from where they're at, tend to focus on mammals from what we've been able to figure out, like sperm whales, rhesus dolphin, eastern tropical Pacific killer whales. Saddle is variable. This one actually right there is the most famous one that's in Mexico that was seen. We had them in 1982, I want to say, off of Newport Beach, with that whale was actually seen. And this guy was just in a publication, this one right there, and specializing in 3 out of 4 attacks on juvenile whale sharks. So super interesting guy. And in Mexico, down south. And then LA pod, really kind of chunky like that one with the real narrow saddles, some of them wide saddles. And again, we haven't seen them since 1997. And this shows the overlap of some of these different populations. Off our area, we've seen eastern tropical Pacific and bigs and offshore killer whales. Those 3 different types. Southern residents down to Monterey. Bigs, CA20 over there on the right, one of our older killer whales. He's over 55 years old. He was seen within the last 6 months out in the Channel Islands. He's, let's see, he's seen with 54 off to the right, who's probably his mom. And she's at least 65. Females are at least 10 when they can give birth. So just trying to backdate how old she could be, much older than that. CA10 was seen last week off the Channel Islands, and he's at least 59, 60 years old. CA140, Emma, she's got these 2 nicks in her dorsal fin that she got before 2008. She's a super good, very adept gray whale calf hunter. And she's got kids and grandkids and even great grandkids. It's got a lot of little babies in there. One of the new little babies is one of her great grandkids. So it's exciting. That was just last week or so. And they eat all kinds of prey, gray whale, harbor porpoise, sea lion, and so on. All kinds of things that they might eat in different places. And less frequently documented would be minke whale, although this year when there were fewer gray whales, there were a couple minke whale attacks up in Monterey with like over 35 killer whales attacking them. Fin whales, sperm whale, particularly those ones out further offshore, Dall's porpoise, Monterey, rhesus dolphin, a couple documented in Monterey, out by Catalina, bottlenose dolphin. Obviously, we don't have a documented kill of a humpback in California. A fisherman told me about it, never sent me pictures, but we have definitely had attacks, and many of them have tooth rakes on them, and they're basically attacked when they're in Mexico, when they're only a couple weeks old, as opposed to gray whales when they are on the northbound migration a few months old and they have baby fat, a lot of baby fat. Humpback moms have this big 18-foot flipper and could smack the killer whales up the side, and will have an escort often with them on the breeding grounds. But off Australia, There's ones that specialize in getting those calves, and a lot of our humpbacks have those rake marks. And blue whale, there's documented 2 harassments of blue whales that ended up with blood coming up off the flukes of the blue whale. Blue whales don't like that. Well, that's the one, in fact. That was in March 2014, and there was a killer whale that was hanging on to the tip of the fluke, and there's blood flying off. And the killer whale got cartwheeled. That blue whale was a juvenile, took a dive, popped up half a mile away, took one breath, took a dive, popped up half a mile away. The killer whales did not follow him, and you could see on the right slide the blood coming off that. And 12 plus killer whales rushed a blue whale. Could have been just for fun, and the blue whale took off, and they did not chase it. And off of Baja, this is a famous one in 1977, at least 25 killer whales attacked a blue whale and fatally wounded it. So they ambush their prey. The moms lead the hunt. They kind of have different roles. They'll have like, everybody's doing something different. With sea lions, they're smacking them, headbutting them. We saw that last week off the Channel Islands. Frosty, the real pale. Anyone here Frosty? Yeah, Frosty was there last week and the week before, multiple times, in fact. And this is Fat Fin when he was younger. And Fat Fin was an orphaned whale. And he, on the right there, he hit that sea lion at least 40 times. All the bones were probably broken. And then he didn't eat it. Just playing with it. Another time, he brought a sea lion to the boat and he showed everybody it. And then he ate it. Some of these young males, we have at least 3 young males who like to show off their food. One of them, Bumper, he brought over a gray whale calf to show me. Brought it right to the front of the boat. Look what I got. Oh. Leaping on top of the sea lion, ramming the sea lion, throwing the elephant seal in the air. And these are 2 killer whale calves. That was 50, let's see, who was that? 138A and 51A. They grabbed onto A1. They grabbed onto each one had a sea lion flipper, and they carried it in their mouth like a dog with a bone for a mile, all the way into Carmel Bay, all the way out of Carmel Bay. They were only a year old, and they were like learning what to do, how to be a killer whale. Predation on seabirds. This is part of culture. Practicing with seabirds, smacking the seabird, chasing the seabird, hit the seabird. Seabird doesn't like that. Rhinoceros auklets, for example, all kinds of seabirds, some shearwaters, going after them. And these guys were having quite a time for like an hour. And this was a fun one, kick the salmon. Only seen this game once. These guys don't eat salmon, but they threw a salmon up in the air, and one of our drone operator in Monterey had a drone above it, and it almost knocked the drone out. The fish went all the way up, went all the way down. The killer whales did not eat the fish. The fish swam away, but they were playing kick the salmon. It did. And yeah, the salmon doesn't like that game either. But this is another way of probably teaching the young ones how to be a good killer whale person. When I was on my NOAA trip, I got off for 4 days, 4 days that we had off in between trips. Of course, I went whale watching because that's what a whale addict does. And went out there and got to see this killer whale hit a harbor seal, tried to hit it and throw it in the air and missed. Did it again, did it a 3rd time and actually smacked itself in the belly and missed. And the 4th time is this one, and it did it, and it's gotten pretty famous. It went like 80 feet in the air. And that harbor seal's alive with its eyes going, what? And the birds are flying around. It hit the water like cement wall. It was dead. But there was a guy filming it next to us, and that went viral. It was crazy. It's still the craziest predation. I got 8 pictures, and then it went out of the camera frame. And I'm like, where is it? Where is it? Several seconds later, plop, because it just went so high. Absolutely amazing. Specializing on gray whales, not too often southbound, although one of the Eastern Tropical Pacific killer whale groups got our first southbound calf last year in January. Mostly northbound when they're much meatier and there's more to eat there. They go after the tongue and more of the whale. They don't just eat the tongue. And they will go, for example, crisscross along these canyons in Monterey Bay, looking for gray whale calves. The moms that hug the coast can get through safe, but many will try to take a shortcut. And the killer whales go across the edges of that canyon looking for gray whale moms and calves in April and May. So in spring of 2016, we identified 90 different killer whales. And 2018, we actually had 50 in 1 day, spread over 6 miles. It was after a gray whale kill and a bunch of different families. I think 14 different families came in. They were socializing. Males were going from group to group looking for receptive females. They were flirting. Moms were hanging out with each other. I have a 1-year-old. You have a 1-year-old. Let's talk about it. You know, how about its bathroom habits, all these different things. It was so interesting seeing these whales mix and match. We saw 2 babies never identified before. In all of our years at Point Vicente, we've only seen 1 northbound attack, and that was, let's see, May 12th. May 3rd, I was in Monterey and saw an attack. May 12th, I was off Point Vicente, and they said, we have killer whales. Got in a boat racing toward them with my friend Eric Martin, and we have gray whale cow calves. And then, oh no! And 2 cow calves went by safe, and these guys were hanging around the corner ambushing them, and they got a calf and towed it offshore. So they, a matriarch coordinates the attack. They separate the calf, ram the calf, and drown the calf. They have different roles. Emma is a separator and also a rammer, and her son, Ben, is the best of the males. A lot of the males kind of hang back and let the females do the work, but Ben gets right in there and he does the work too, and he's really, really good in the attack. And what will the gray whale do? She'll hold the calf up on her back, and she'll use her flippers to try to separate them. I've only seen 1 successful in keeping her baby alive. And this is the May 3rd attack date that I told you about. Over 7 hours, the longest ever documented, over 16 humpbacks coming in and yelling about it. Really loud trumpet calls over all day long, coming in and screaming at the killer whales, like, what are you doing? Stop it. Okay, the gray whale calf died 3 minutes after we got there, and 7 hours later, they were still screaming at them, trying to keep them from eating the gray whale calf. It was absolutely fascinating. And this particular day that I was there was a gray whale calf killed the day before, and we came back the next day in the fog, and there were a couple humpbacks who had been there the day before, and they were looking at the gray whale calf and gently touching it like an elephant touches a dead elephant. Super interesting, really interesting, putting their head down, looking at it. Killer whales moved away, and these humpbacks gently touched the dead calf, and we're checking it out. Never seen anything like that. First time that we've ever documented anything like that. And humpbacks do have extensive spindle cells, which are associated with empathy and intuition, many more than we do. Killer whales may have 3 times as many as us. This is one of my favorite killer whales, Bumper, breaching off her coast. They're very quiet during a hunt, but after the hunt, they will breach and be super active. This is Bumper's mom, Star, who was the first killer whale to bring killer whales down and basically show off Southern California to the rest of the ones that would hang out off of Monterey and Channel Islands with Point Vicente in the background. I think she was pregnant there. Big belly. Most frequently encountered matriline in Southern California. We saw them constantly for many years. We saw them 3 years in a row on January 1st. The 4th year, people were like, where are they? They're supposed to be here today. Well, they were there the 29th and the 2nd. And people are like, why are they early or late? They come whenever they want to, but it was 5 years in a row, right around New Year's, and we haven't seen them here for several years, and we got to see them not too long ago in December. They were right off here, a couple days. So the ones in this family, we've got Orion and son CA51B, and he was born 1998. Got Bumper, born in 2003 on the right. He's always had a fin, even when he was little, tipped this way. As he grew up, it goes like this. Just maybe it was an injury, maybe it was a birth thing, but his fin's always been a little bent. And daughter Aurora, who now has her own family and kids and grandkids elsewhere. And then she had lost one. And then we have Comet in here, who's now should be having a baby any day. Can't believe it. Saw her when she was so tiny. And yeah, real special. Comet's in the lower right there. She's 1 year old. I'm in a lifeguard boat. Heard there were orcas off of Point Furman. Remember the movie Pretty Woman? I'm like, I have money. Can someone take me out in a boat? I have money. Please take me out in a boat. There's killer whales here. And 3 people turned me down. And head lifeguard goes, I want to see killer whales. So we went out in the lifeguard boat, and that little girl put her head on her mom and went and looked me in the eye. It was like electrical bolt. It was so cool. So she's got a super fancy eye patch with an extension that we don't have anything like that in our population. So I named her Comet for this like comet-like tail. Everybody in this family gets stellar names except for Bumper. The 4th time he bumped my boat, like to say hello, like, hey, how you doing? Bumper. There he is, checking out my friend Eric's boat, coming by really close. He's super boat curious. This is the most boat curious family in all of California. They approach boats more often. They hang out. They might go up against the engine. They might check it out. And if it's Bumper, he might give you a bump hello. So a good example of being able to track whales by their movements and by photo ID is this particular time, January 2012. Over this time, they were seen so many times and documented, we were able to track them. Point Vicente, January 1st, January 2nd, then Dana Point, then Point Vicente, then Zuma Beach, then Avila Beach, then Monterey. So you can see their travels and how long it took them. So just looking at Bumper, and he's a sprouter is when their fin starts to grow. So he was born in 2003. In 2005, he's got this little fin. And in 2011, his fin's starting to get straighter. He got this notch in it during a gray whale attack. And 2013, his fin's getting bigger. And 2018, it's even bigger. By 2022, now he's like 19 years old, and he's by 20 years old considered to be fully grown. Might get bulkier, but not real bigger. So now he's a big adult male. And I was telling somebody about the time in Avila Beach that year when there was a bird watching group, and the captain goes, "We got something under our boat. It's like a whale sized. We got something big under our boat." And they're all looking around, and Bumper pops up next to him. And then his family pops up feeding on something. And Bumper takes a look at them, takes his flukes, and throws water up and hits people on the boat with water. And then he stuck his head out and looked at them, and then went to his family to go eat. So I told a reporter that, who told a friend of hers, who's a cartoonist that, who then made a cartoon about Bumper. A witness reported you were deliberately splashing the deck of a whale watching boat. I'm going to have to issue you a citation. So that's cool. That's Bumper there. That's Bumper. Yeah. So here, let's see. Yeah, that's Bumper when he was littler, coming up to me on our boat. I'll Point Vicente right around New Year's Day at that time. And here's Aurora's family, who now it's crazy. Aurora has a baby. She's traveling with two of her daughters who have their first babies. So it's 3 moms and 3 daughters traveling, 2 daughters and 3 babies all in the same family. So a group of 6 with 3 babies. So it's really, really cool. So this is off Point Vicente a few years back, and they had eaten some sea lions, and they were off there. And we see him, this was I just took this picture December 27th. Last year. I was so excited to finally get to see them again in Southern California. So now that's a Comet in the front. That little girl on her mom with her head on her mom is now a big girl now. And she was born in 2010. So she's about 14, and they usually have their first calf between 12 and 15. And I was looking for a baby bump. It's kind of hard. They got to be wide and from above maybe, but she's fine. She was always little for her age. When she was 4, she looked like she was 1. When she was 8, she looked like she was 4. And now she's finally almost caught up with her mom. And then her brother, Orion, and Bumper there. So speaking of Frosty earlier, Frosty is a big killer whale born to CA216C, A16C1. Don't know if it's male or female yet. Did breach, but was going the wrong way. Couldn't see what the belly looked like. But actually, I got pictures when Frosty was about a month old up by Catalina. Looked pretty normal coloration, but depending upon the light, sometimes it gleamed like a pearly iridescence. And then in light, like a couple weeks later, looked white when the sun was out. You could still see fetal folds on Frosty at that time. And then older Frosty became whiter and whiter. But then the older Frosty head started turning black. And super interesting, there was another whale named Talouk, who's about 9 months older off British Columbia with the exact same thing. Not all white, not albino. And we think they probably have something called Higashi syndrome, which is a rare recessive disorder that is not good. It typically leads to eye issues, nerve issues, and usually shortened lives. And usually it's lowered immunity. So Talouk only made it to about 2. There's one named Chima who made it to 3. She was in captivity. There's been a couple others in the population. We suspect that Talouk and Frosty may have the same dad. We know these guys have been up in British Columbia. It's a super rare thing to see. Frosty's 5 now. Okay, so Frosty is the longest living one and the only one we know along our coast who has this. We don't know for sure if that's what it is, but it's displaying all the attributes. And one that looks similar was tested and did have that. So since they're all progressing the same way, we think it does. So we just say probably. So Frosty's always been super lean, but also very active. So looking good, hanging in there. January 12th, lower right-hand corner, picture of Frosty right there. I think that's Evan Brodsky. Evan, good job. That's a picture of Frosty there. And you could see the white isn't as solid now, right? It's kind of sketchy. The head's even blacker. And the dorsal fin and the pectoral flippers and flukes are getting a little darker. So it'd be really interesting to see how this continues to develop. And this is my friend Lottie's fantastic picture of Frosty breaching. Frosty, could you not have breached like this? Then we know if you were a boy or girl. But no, but that's a fabulous shot. And Frosty also has, this whole family has large eye patches, has kind of funky eye patches, very soft, not well-defined edges, very unusual. Kind of eye patch sort of dips at the bottom. It's a little family trait. 3 of the members of the family have this dip, maybe the same dad, don't know. Recently, their Pacific Offshore Adventures, which is Newport Coastal Ventures, the offshore group that goes out of Oxnard with Captain Ryan Lawler and his team on orca quests. And they have done actually 27 orca quests since August. One of them was today. And they have seen killer whales. I have to update this on 23 out of 27 trips because they had some today. The CA-138s were out there. So he has been consistently seeing killer whales in the Santa Barbara Channel and out by the Channel Islands. We suspected for years that killer whales hung out there when we didn't see them in other places. So he's going in different areas around the Channel Islands where there's lots of dolphin out there. There's lots of pinnipeds, seals and sea lions out there. And we're seeing often whales that aren't often seen. So this whale, for example, 199, saw him in 2018, wasn't seen for 5 years. And that whale was there. I couldn't believe it. Literally, I could feel my eyes bulging out of my head when I looked at it. He says, who is this whale with a wavy fin? And I'm thinking, well, we have one with a really wavy fin, but he's probably dead. And not dead. So that was really cool to see that whale. And it was like, even with some whales that hadn't been seen for 20 years. 20 years. We thought they were long gone. So that was really cool. And this one is Obi-Wan, CA-10. Obi-Wan was seen just last week in the Channel Islands. The CA-39s, also, these are all from the Channel Islands, multiple different trips. And CA-27F and big brother CA-27C. So that's a really hot spot, something new that we've learned this year. We suspected they were out there. We know they're out there. He's got like 82, 85% seeing them. So if you want to try doing that, it's called Orca Quest. Special trips out of Oxnard to go out all day long and you kind of pass up everything else just looking for killer whales. And you don't typically come back 8 hours later, just saying. Tend to be long trips and it's wonderful. So occurring more often, we have these exotic whales like where are whales. I went up to San Juan Island and I went whale watching and I heard on the radio they were seeing some whales. Nobody knew who they were. And I was talking to the captain about the California whales. And I thought, wouldn't it be fun if it was one of our whales? And I got there, I said, oh my God, it is one of our whales. And he said, no, prove it. So I was the only one there who knew who these whales were. So that was really cool. So it's our whales, CA-40, Xena, and her son, Hercules, 137. And they were up there with the T-199. So that was cool. They were calling them exotics. Nobody believed me. And I said, no, that's probably his mom. And, this is what they look like. Very rarely seen whales. These guys have only been seen a handful of times in California. I think 5 times in Monterey. I saw them at San Nicolas Island, 2014. They've been seen in BC. Hardly ever seen. We don't know where they go. Unknown type killer whales that are pelagic or offshore. Whales that hang out offshore, but they specialize in mammals. Been known to eat all kinds of different things. And again, cookie cutter shark bites is a big hallmark for a lot of them. Here's some examples of some of these guys with our numbers that we've given them. CA-292, 239, eating fin whale, rhesus dolphin, the sperm whale before. Ones we don't know more about, we need to know more about. We need to, again, catch the vocalizations because those are unique, and also biopsies too. Fecal samples, whatever we could do. Matches offshore killer whales. Those are the shark eaters. There's a female and her daughter that we have matched from down here, matched all the way up to Kodiak. And they were seen in this last encounter in Monterey not too long ago. 087. First seen in 1992. That was our first sighting. I was out on that boat. 25 killer whales. We had no idea who they were at that time. And her little daughter, who's now a big daughter, who's had kids that are on her own. A really long distance match. and long distance travel. Their teeth are really worn down from eating shark, flat, all worn down, really look different. The mammal eater's teeth are pointy and the shark eater's really, really flat. And you can tell them from the side too. So offshore killer whales, first seen myself and colleague Nancy Black and Richard Chinello, California Killer Whale Project, first saw them in 1992. First offshore seen in California. They also saw them that year in British Columbia. And in 1995, February 10th, they were seen off Orange County in LA, and February 11th off of LA. And we had at least 75 spread out between half a mile and 11 miles offshore, and anywhere from 6 to 15 per group. So really interesting, small whales. The males are not very sexually dimorphic. Their fins are smaller and tend to be round and narrow, and they like to lobtail a lot. Don't know why, but every single encounter, they lobtail. And they look really similar actually to LA pod. LA pod it might be Eastern Tropical Pacific kind of offshore killer whale, but they have these scoops in the fins. Seen them around sea lions, fin whales. In Monterey Bay, there was an occasion in which there were 3 gray whales rolling over and mating and displaying everything. And there were 25 offshore killer whales watching them and interacting with them. And the gray whales were not afraid of having everything bitten off, you know. And if they were dolphin, they are dolphin, and they're really very inquisitive. And the sea lions were hanging out with them. And obviously there's some kind of sound that these guys make that doesn't scare them away. So there they are on the bottom there, hanging out with the gray whales, which were mating in January 2003 for like 45 minutes. Okay, feeding on 7-gill shark, December 13, 2016, photograph from the air. This mom with a little newborn calf, it still has fetal folds, has a 7-gill shark in her mouth, first time documented in California, first time documented period with offshore killer whales. And on the bottom there with Opa on Halloween 2012, there were killer whales, so I did not make it home. I missed so many planes coming home, I just stopped doing round trips because I was out with killer whales and couldn't get to the airport. That was a good excuse. Sleeper shark, Greenland shark, halibut, they've been known to eat. And then on December 19th, we had them off our area and had a drone up with Eric Martin's drone and photographed them in 5 minutes, nursing her calf. And she had a blue shark to go over her flipper, like carrying it on her flipper for food later on. The biggest of the males that we've seen off here is scoop fin. None of them have nicknames, but I couldn't help but name this one scoop fin because of the scoop in his fin. But he's been seen in a lot of our encounters off of Southern California. We've seen him out by Catalina Island. This one was in 2021, had a mom that I actually saw April 1st, 2001, off Point Furman from shore, and got in a boat and got pictures of her. And she was with her little son at that time. And then in 2021, now she has 3 or 4 kids. And she has an unusual saddle with lots of black intrusions in it. It's unusual for offshore killer whales. December 26th, they were seen in Monterey Bay. Estimates went from 40 to 60 to 80, a whole bunch of them. And so these are some that we identified with the help from our colleague, Graham Ellis up in British Columbia, who's the offshore orca genius. 0451 and 0450 associates. You can see how close those numbers are. And 079, who's one of the older females, been around for a long time. And at least since 1992, I think, and 451. So lots and lots of offshore type killer whales are checking out. And the Eastern Tropical Pacific killer whales, which we've had off this area too, again, coming up from areas on Mexico. This was in 2018. We had a visit by 10 killer whales, including a male who we haven't seen come back since, but they were here 10 days. This male right there, the funny kind of witch's hat kind of look to it. Very interesting, eating common dolphin every day, sometimes bottlenose dolphin day after day after day after day, sometimes 5 a day, 10 a day for this group, and just wiping them out, just dolphin, dolphin, dolphin. And then the same ones came back without the male, but with some more kids, 10 of them. And between December 11th and February 3rd, we had 20 documentations of this group, 20. And sometimes it was only like 5 of them, seemed to be 2 matrilines, seeing them off here. This is Patty, raise your hand. This is Patty's amazing picture after dark. And that's also Patty's picture after dark. knocking that common dolphin out of the water. And that's top notch. They've since given them nicknames and getting to figure out who's related to who. It's been really interesting. Dolphins not thinking it's so interesting when under La Jolla Pier got some bottlenose dolphin. Bottlenose dolphin inshore population isn't that big, and they knocked off a lot of those. We actually witnessed that, so we're concerned if they target, and they were La Jolla been documented at least 3 times in that area picking off those dolphin, that could be a real big problem for them. And this was our first baby gray whale of the season last year. That was the only look at it, 1 drone view. And then the drone operator saw a bunch of bubbles the next time he had his drone over them. And then they were attacking the mom. She wouldn't leave. Even at dark, she was hanging out where her dead calf was. Absolutely would not leave the area. It was and it was just born. Its flukes were floppy and everything. Very sad. This is the one I was talking about, who's the most famous one in Mexico, Montezuma, 2002, Newport Beach. And also 1994 was the first year in Mexico this whale was seen. And 2017, January 7th, I saw him right off Newport Beach. And there were common dolphins fleeing, but they didn't eat him. But apparently he is a whale shark eater. LA Pod, who we used to see, was my very first killer whale. Started the census January 1st, 84. January 28th, there was a breaching minke whale. January 27th, there were pilot whales at the west end of Catalina. And I dreamt about killer whales all night long. And then the phone rang and there's killer whales at Marineland. And that's where our research project is. And I said, of course, there are killer whales at Marineland because you're at Marineland. And he's like, no, there's killer whales like right outside the rock, right here, right now. So I got my friend Bob Talbot, who's now a well-known filmmaker, and we went out and we found him. And it was this LA pod of whales that we documented for 15 years. So there we are that first day out in his 17-foot Zodiac, looking at him. And this is from the old Catalina boat looking down at us and one of the whales. And here's my picture of the whale from the side. Real exciting, especially for a sea lion that was trying to hide in the kelp. And then it tried to jump in our boat. And they were vocalizing like crazy. And they were playing the vocalizations over the PA of the big Catalina boat. And someone forgot to press record. So very bummed because it was incredible sounds. And this is the whale that ate Jaws, pretty famous. She's got a little white birthmark right there. And there she is right here with a big notch and a real narrow saddle. And we saw them regularly, and she killed and ate a great white shark in October 97, Farallon Islands. This is wavy fin. He looks like he might have bullet shots or something here. He has 2 wounds right here that he's had over the years. They were here, February 13th, 88, 9:30 off the LA Light, all the way to 4:30 off Redondo. And they were breaching, spy hopping, surrounding the boat. One of the passengers says, I want my money back because you said you get money back if we don't see a whale. And they're the largest member of the dolphin family. And everybody turned around and went, he didn't get his money back. He had breaching, spy hopping whales mugging their boat. No. And in fact, this is that day. This is the day over on the right where February 13th, right, real and close to shore. Yeah, throw him over. Okay, this is one of our whales, that wavy fin male with a shark in his mouth off of Newport Beach. And here we are looking at the whales in an old Marineland tower with Point Vicente there. I missed the LA pod. This was after she attacked the white shark, and you could see the wounds on her head. Big wounds there, and on her flippers, all the skin scraped off. They did a couple specials on the whale that ate Jaws, attacked and killed it. The shark was about 13 foot, and she was maybe 13 to 15 foot. Small whale, yeah. It's a big shark, well, relatively big, and she was a small whale. They said she kind of looked bigger than that the shark may have looked bigger than she was. But anyway, it's really interesting. Resident killer whales, they're fish eaters. We've got northern residents, western Alaska residents, southern Alaska residents. Resident killer whales are fish specialists, and there's different populations of them along the coast. And one of those populations, southern residents, goes from about the middle of Vancouver Island into California. They're highly endangered. It says 74. Since I had put this up there, one had passed away, so it's 73 now. They specialize Chinook salmon, 85% plus of their diet. Large group, surface active, JK and L pod. We first saw them in Monterey, January 2000. The next time was 2003. And we've seen them in most winters since then, but now in more recent years, skipping sometimes. They have real interesting saddles. Again, it's gorgeous black intrusions in here. That's Racer, photographed in Monterey, spy hopping. Critically endangered, captured for display. 45 of them were caught when there was less than 200 of them at the time. Most of them died. Degraded habitat, not enough food, boat traffic, Navy sonar, fisheries interaction. Climate change, not enough salmon, not enough salmon. And the biggest problem is not enough salmon. High calf mortality from those pollutants stored in their blubber. And the most recent calf is J62. Born December 2024, still alive. J61 was the calf of J35. That's the mom who carried her calf for 16 days. And she's carrying this new baby who didn't make it also. So not good. But these other babies here, these are alive. J59, K45. Those are still hanging in there and doing really, really well. So good hope for the future, including some females in there. Gluten stored in the blubber. Again, moms get rid of the pollution. If they don't get enough food, they're metabolizing more of their blubber and getting that to the baby. Males never get rid of the pollutants in their blubber. They tend to be more immune problems. Females get rid of the pollutants by feeding the babies. So we think that's one reason that contributes to males dying sooner than females. And California killer whales are off the charts with pollution. PCBs, the fire retardants, all that kind of stuff. I mean, we have fires in California and all of that. It's just, it goes into the ocean. This gets in their system. It's real bad. It's called a California signature. They could take a biopsy and know if a whale's been feeding in California. So males live to be 30 to 60, females 50 to 100. Take a look at this. Okay, this is for PCBs. Look at the California signature. Look at how high that is. Adult males, particularly high. This is for DDT. Off the charts. The DDT manufacturing plant, Montrose and Torrance, closed down in 1972, but there's still those ancestral pollutants in the sediments and still gets in the ecosystem. Oh yeah, those barrels of DDT, they're out by Catalina and they wouldn't sink. They shot holes in them to make them sink. And then what do you think happens? DDT leaks out for decades along Catalina, gets in the ecosystem, gets in the fish, gets to the bald eagles. They lay eggs with no eggshell. They sit on it and guess what? No babies. So it's a whole big thing, It's real bad. Improving because the year they decided to give up on the Catalina Island bald eagle reintroduction, they had their own successfully. So, and they are still having some. So some problems they might have are playing with lines. Several of our new babies have rope marks on them for playing with these prawn traps. They play with the kelp and sometimes they think that these lines are fun, we think. And this is a baby right here with this line here. This is, it's not line, this is an entanglement scar, 23A5 in April 2018 and was last seen in May 2018. Mom disappeared, this baby disappeared, and the next little kid who's about 3 years old disappeared. Whole family fragmented. So now we're seeing just parts of the family, say, out at the Channel Islands last week. But it was the most stable family that we had. So that's a big problem for them. So some babies, again, Patty, little baby called Shadow. She got pictures of it. In Monterey Bay, we love these little babies. 23A1A was just seen last week in Channel Islands. 39A5 was seen a couple weeks ago, Channel Islands and in Monterey. And 202D was seen up in Monterey and also in the Channel Islands. So again, 10 new babies this last year, which is really, really cool. And if there's any questions, this picture of killer whales in the sunset, I'd be happy to answer any questions. I put in a lot more and tell a lot more stories, but you know, watching the time. Yes.
The identification system that you use, like here at CA a lot, I see some of them got a J59. What does that mean?
Good question. Different kinds of killer whales will use different designations. The mammal eaters used to be called transients that many people still do, but we call bigs now, most of us. Used to have all kinds of different pods, like Y pod and O pod and P pod. Came a time when John Ford, Graham Ellis, Ken Balcom, big wigs got together and said, you know what, we're just going to put all these together and lump them up. They're all maybe related. We're going to call them T's. So T10, T12, T15. So all of that group's Ts. Ours, we numbered with CA numbers, whether they were offshore killer whales, whether they were LA pod, whether they were, I'm not sure who you are, Eastern Tropical Pacific. We did it back in the day, we just called them CA numbers. So CA1 is that LA pod male that I showed you with the real notchy fin. It's an actual, right, the CA just means it's a whale seen in California. So we're up to 300 and something for those whales, okay? For the O numbers, it's the ones who are offshore killer whales. O for offshore. And for the southern residents, you've got J-pod, K-pod, and L-pod. So they have J, K, or L. That doesn't mean they're all related. They're in the same grouping, but within that, there's different matrilines. The matriline of mom and kids. If you're a resident, you tend to hang out with multiple moms and kids, extended families. If you're a Biggs, you can't have real chatty and try to sneak up on a whale. So you tend to hang out with the mom and her kids, and maybe her daughter has one kid, maybe two, and then the daughters start spending more time away, and they make their own little family and they get together for birthdays, holidays, and stuff like that. So each specific whale has one. So Star, one of the favorite family, she is CA51. She's the 51st whale that we numbered. So the way we do it is 51 would be, say, the mom, and the way for the Biggs, and same with T's, the kid gets that number plus you add something. So 51A is her first kid, B is the second kid, C is the third, D is the fourth. Then if, say, 51A, Aurora had a kid, which she did, multiple, she's on 5 now, okay, she has 51A1, 51A2. So we switch between ABC and 1, 2, 3. Hey, that rhymes. Okay, so you got 51A1, A2, A3, A4, A5. Okay, she lost A4, eclipse, now she's on A5. So, and it will keep going like that. It could be cumbersome. We were just talking about this a couple of days ago, that you can get this long, long, long line when you have multiple generations. But you go to J-pod, for example, and the newest baby is J61. You don't know who the mother is. The next baby is J52, 62, 63, 64, all of the southern residents. So although they have a unique number and it's a lot easier to remember, and a lot of people do nicknames now, people say, what's their real name? Well, only they know. Okay, we don't know what their real name is, but we can give them a nickname. And I like nicknames that have to do with a behavioral trait or a physical thing. Like the Star, it was the Star who brought everybody down to Southern California. And Aurora had 3 lines that looked wavy like Aurora Borealis. And Orion had a black belt along the side like Orion's belt. And Bumper, you know. So that's a really good question. So it's different. So we're just talking about that. What are we going to do when we're to 12, you know? So it'll probably end up being a new system. But right now it's really great because I can know, oh, 140A, 1B she's now this many, you know, great grandmother or whatever. Yes. 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 Well, Andy was actually after my colleague Nancy Black's dog, who's Captain Andy, who used to always go on the boats with her, who loved killer whales and tried to throw frisbee and to play catch and didn't understand when they weren't throwing the frisbee back. Okay, that was Andy right when Andy had passed. And Astrid wanted to kind of stay with that. What would be a good A name that could kind of go along with Andy, because Andy's not sort of astronomical, was an exception, and just seemed to sort of fit with that particular one, like a star, you know. Then we've got Dipper, who's got a dip in the saddle, a dip in her eye patches, and actually Dipper has no black nipple spots or pasties. She doesn't have a black spot. She's only female in our population who doesn't. Dipper had a baby. We named the baby thinking about Nova, and guess what? Nova doesn't have nipple pasties either. So yeah, so they're the only 2 that don't have them. So Nova for new, somebody new and different and exciting. Dipper just matched Dippy, 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 you know. Oh, Andy, yeah, Andy's fabulous. She's got a little nick near the top. She was seen recently, and Andy's actually spending less and less with her group. She's kind of hanging out with Jimmy Lick, who may or may not be a relative. I think he is. And they're kind of hanging out together a bit. So I have a feeling she may end up separating, going with them. Right now, she's mostly with her family, with the 3 moms and 3 kids. But Andy's awesome. I have 3 pictures of her close to boat. Andy is actually one of the three. Andy, Bumper, and Comet are the three I've heard vocalize a lot, do raspberries, do all kinds of vocalizations.
Oh,
Yeah, I could do imitations, but we have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions probably and have to go.
There are some questions in the chat as well.
Oh, okay.
So if you want to, since you have a microphone, just let people, if they know if they have questions, they can. send them in the
Yes.
chat.
If you have questions, please stick them in the chat here. Yes. Yeah.
Yes. How do we measure spindle cells and how do we determine that they affect empathy?
That's not my specialty, but I've read about it. And I've read about the people who do the brain research. And that's something that really stood out to them was looking at the brains of some dead whales. You have to have a dead whale to do it. Is looking at the structure and looking at where they are in our brain and what they seem to be associated with and wondering why the heck do humpbacks have so many? Do killer whales have so many? And we know that killer whales can have friends that last for a long time. We know that humpbacks actually also have long-term associations. And there's a lot we don't know. And we know how many of you spend time with humpbacks? Super emotional, very, very emotional animals. So that has to be all tied with brain research, and it's physical. It's looking at the structure and trying to associate structure with function and application. And boy, when I saw that, interaction with that dead calf, it was just like my hair stood up. It was goosebumps. Yeah, it's right now. I could just thinking about it. Yes, and then I'm going to go to one of these. Yes. Calf recruitment means how many calves they have in the population. Okay, so if you have a high calf recruitment, that means lots of babies. If you have low calf recruitment, that's not good. That means not many babies. It's just a fancy way of saying that lots of kids and not so many. Okay, have I ever jumped in the water with killer whales? No. Have I been tempted? You bet. But no, I have not. I have had Bumper actually, when I didn't have my stick, I had a GoPro. I just had it in my hand and put it by the boat, and he came right up to it, and he was within less than 2 feet from my hand. Did I feel nervous? No. It's Bumper. Okay. What kind of genetic testing do researchers do to determine different ecotypes? That's, again, beyond my pay grade. Is it invasive? Okay, genetic testing can be done. Biopsies is the main way. Also, skin sloughing is a possibility, particularly with like sperm whales. They slough skin, a lot of skin. The whale breaches, you can look for the skin. One of my good friends, Deborah Giles, is going to be talking at Aquarium of the Pacific on the 5th that you should go to if you possibly can, and it will be recorded too. And she does work with scat dogs who go and are on the boat, and they could sniff the poo of the whales, and then they scoop up the poo, and you have slough cells in the poo. Oh yeah, and it's done with endangered species all over, but they're specialized to be able to pinpoint where the poo of the whales are, which isn't necessarily easy to find. You could be following a female, and you could find out if she's pregnant and all kinds of things from that. So, and that's not invasive at all. By picking up the poo, whale doesn't care. Also, you can, there's drones that go over, and it's called snot bots, that collect the blow of the whale. So you can get some DNA that way too. So there's a lot of different ways, and genotypes is a lot of controversy over what constitutes a genotype. A group of whales that have these similarities and vocalizations, in genetics and their behavior and all sorts of things. So it's real interesting work, and there's different ways to collect it. What the best way to collect it actually and get the most information is the biopsy, because you can get the skin as well as the blubber and be able to get a lot more data from that. Anybody else? Yes.
Do you know why the humpback whales will come around and make the vocalization and try to protect the gray whale?
We wish we knew, particularly in this case that we had done a collaborative paper of researchers from all over the world. And our instance, May 3rd, 2012, was the one with the most prolonged, and there's no calf. Like, who are you protecting? The carcass. And we'll see them station themselves over the carcass of a gray whale calf and try, if they can't stop them from killing it, they'll like try to guard the carcass. And when they'll come up when the killer whale surfaces, they'll yell at them, or they'll chase after them, or they'll tail slash, or they use their flippers. One almost smacked one and then went upside down and pooped on itself. You know, you see all kinds of interesting behaviors. We don't know what causes them to do that. It may be protective. It might be what's called mobbing, like a bunch of birds mobbing a predator. In some cases, like one of them, it was a 3-year-old who had killer whale tooth rakes, so survived a killer whale attack. So it might be a memory of being attacked, or a mother who might have lost a baby, or just protecting other species, because there's empathy shown. Many of you know about this with one species and another, like a dog protecting a cat from a car going to hit it. There's many examples in the animal world, so it shouldn't surprise us that they're doing that. It's just hard for us to be able to test it, because you can't like test it on land. We just observations and getting really good documentation videos of all good observations as much as we can. It's hard to know, because when I ask them why, they don't tell me clearly in a way that I could easily communicate with everyone. People ask me that, like, why is that whale breaching? Or we had a gray whale that Patty got pictures of that went by the census and had bad entanglement wounds on it, was not entangled anymore, and looked like a juvenile. And one of our drone folks got video footage of it rolling and rolling and rolling and rolling and rolling over and over. And I had at least 3 people say, why is that whale rolling? So the whale told me that it got out of the entanglement from rolling. And it also told me that it feels really good. You know, I don't know. It must like it. Otherwise, why would it do it? But they have seen whales disentangle by rolling before. So I can't know, because this whale can't communicate that to me, but it's doing it because it can, and it's doing it because it wants to. But what's actually, making it do that, we don't know. But it's sure interesting. Anybody else? Yes.
So you're always in film, but you can't see what's the best way to like stay up to it and inform us what's going on.
Well, we have a sighting network. We have a lot of friends on the water who are captains, who are whale watchers up and down the coast. Like, I got a message that from one of our friends, Captain Ryan, that he had seen the killer whales out by the Channel Islands. So I wanted to share that with you guys. And so we'll hear from different people. We'll pass on to friends and colleagues, like who's being seen, and I'll say how many whales, because that in my mind, I'm very numbers and spatial oriented. It's a male and a calf, and there's 3 of them. Oh, then it should only be this group or this group. So we hear from others, social media, text, I'm not always on the water, but a lot. But I do a lot of work on the computer too, and whale matching and things like that. So there's a community of folks, of researchers and citizen scientists who are communicating with each other a lot and sharing information. People know that I'm really interested in killer whales, or send us, our group, photographs of killer whales, encounters with killer whales, gray whales now too. Here's a good picture I got of a gray whale, and ooh, that's a really good one. And I'll send it up to my folks in Oregon and British Columbia. So there's a lot more collaboration going on than there used to be, and a lot more people who are sharing, and there's a lot more people with cameras on the water who are getting into areas where people didn't used to. Maybe you caught something, but you didn't have anything now. Now you're a fisherman, you just caught something, there's Frosty going by. You just documented the white whale go by. So we've gotten a lot of, not too many people do the other ones in the group, unfortunately. It's like, let's only watch the white one or the big one or anything like that. If you see whales, get all of them. Don't just pick the baby or the male. Those females are important. They're the heart of the family, yes.
I'm on my kayak and I see gray whales all the time.
This last week, have you seen gray whales?
We're going out tomorrow, but I see them all the time. But I'm wondering where I have tons of pictures. I have a picture of this big blowhole that came right up underneath my kayak. It's amazing. But where would I send that?
Well, if you've got pictures, not the blowholes, because I can't ID too many by the blowholes.
I know, but
I'm good, but what I'm saying is that the side views, yeah, if you've got side views, talk to me. I've got my email up on top there, right up there. Don't send me like all your pictures, but okay, but the side views of the whale, particular, well, that's true for killer whales and fin whales too. But the side view for the gray whale project that we're doing, the side view of it, particularly when it's high arched up, and also the top and bottom of the flukes, like you saw, that we could do the matches. It's older is fine. What we need is location and date. If you know the location, is important. And also if you can get the date or at least a ballpark of a date. Like we got a match of a whale 5 years apart. That was from the Pacific Coast Feeding Group. So yeah, so that's super, super helpful. And then who took the picture and if it was on a boat or whatever. And hopefully we'll have a lot more gray whales coming by very, very soon. And counts were very high by NOAA. I don't think did I mention about that? Even though our counts aren't very high right now, the NOAA started the project, December 30th in the first week, it was kind of low counts. In the second week, they were seeing 40 to 50 a day. And this is just below Carmel. And last week they were seeing 80 plus a day. One day was 97. And the 2 or 3 days ago, they saw over 100. So there's lots of gray whales coming. And a lot of them, I bet, are biasing offshore. But we're really interested. If any of you got any pictures in December in particular, we think there's a high proportion of those Pacific Coast Feeding Group in that really early pictures. If anyone got one in November, the earlier ones in particular, but I'd be really interested in looking at any, good shot from the side. Yeah.
I won't be able to answer this, clearly none of us really know, but do you anticipate all this runoff that is to come from the LA fires impacting migration?
Well, that's a really good question since I was contacted by NOAA Fisheries, since there's a reporter who has the same question. We know that there's a lot of toxins in the water. We don't know the effects necessarily of all these toxins. There hasn't ever been, I don't think, this much potential runoff with these rains coming up, like the pink foamy stuff that they put on and you can't get off your houses, and that's going to go into the water. Toxins could be asbestos from these older buildings. There's a lot of older homes that burn. And that's something he was saying, well, who's the person to contact? So that's something I'm going to follow up on tomorrow too. There's people who test the water, who have tested for pollutants before with who work with sanitation department. Perhaps there's a group with that. With harbor department, there's an environmental group with that. Yes. That and Heal the Bay, those are the 3 that I actually recommended that he contact. Was Heal the Bay is always doing those in the beach report cards. So those are, and the reef, yes, thank you. That was one I didn't mention. Reef Check is also doing that too. So that's something that I don't know a lot about because I know that the fire retardant materials are something that really impacts them and interferes with reproduction. And it's a big problem, and particularly it is off California. So what I need to do now is reach out to these folks with the kinds of things that are going in Malibu. It's right there. And the first runoff is right there. So it is something I haven't had a chance personally to, but tomorrow morning I'm actually counting whales and taking pictures from shore. And the afternoon I have that on my list to reach out and see if there's anyone who's specifically going to. And I bet there are people who are, because it's a big concern, and it won't only just be whales. It'll be the animals that actually live there. Yeah, it's going to be everything. Everything. Yeah. You don't want to be swimming in the water after that rain. You're going to have stuff in there that hasn't been there before. And I'm not talking about an earache, and be serious stuff. You want to stay out of that water. Yes. About everything. I have a massive library. If there's something specifically that you are interested in, email me. Okay. And there's some book recommendations of books that I recommend to our gray whale census folks. But if you email me, I could send you a list, and then I can also send you specifically a list. And that's true of anybody if there's anything specifically. For the binoculars that we use at the census are Fujinons, and they're 7x50s. Fujinon makes really good quality glass, and their USA headquarters is La Jolla area. Okay, so it's not too far away. It's a good excuse to go to La Jolla. And we use for our project 7x50s because 10s can really be shaky and some winds. And yeah, and ours has built-in built-in compass. So I could say I see a whale at 180 degrees, which is about the isthmus of Catalina, actually, due south, 180 degrees, and will let us know has like a has little marks in here which can help us indicate. Yeah, oh yeah, and if you really want to pay the bucks, there's binoculars that could cost $3,000 that you could see 5 miles away. I don't have those binoculars. There's lots of different cameras. Patty could maybe speak to that, but there's lots of different cameras. We need ones with longer lenses, depends on what you're going to do. She's found, I think, a really good lens is one with a lot of flexibility, but I think you mostly use, well, why don't you go
I
ahead?
think almost everybody's taking well pictures and 90 pictures tends to get either an 80 to 400 or 100 to 400. A lot of people shoot for 150 to 600, but that's really hard to hold that and steady on both.
In particular at the high end, that's a good one to use from land. I use 100 to 400. And for me, I shoot a lot at the 400. And I happen to have a crop sensor because for the work I do, people are always saying, the second we see a whale, it's this far away, a killer whale. Who is that? Who is that? And I happen to have pictures of them in my head, so I know them very well, but it's easier having the crop sensor for the work that I do. And then shooting in RAW, you can get a lot more detail with that than just shooting JPEG, particularly from shore. And I got a whale that's a mile out, and it's a fin whale. It's for my colleagues. I want to get the most information I can. Yes.
For location,
Do I use what?
what report?
What 3 words?
Yes. It's an app that I use to pinpoint where I'm shooting, and it actually covers the entire globe in 10-foot squares.
Ah.
And so what you do is you can pinpoint where you're at,
Mm-hmm.
and it'll give you 3 coordinates. Square, apple, and road. And if you plug that in, it'll show you on a map exactly where that is.
Oh, that's really cool. I have a GPS on mine, so I just turn that on so it can GPS tag the pictures. Will give me when I'm sitting at Point Vicetti at the spot where I always sit for decades. I know exactly where I'm at, but if I'm on a boat, then I have external GPS that I have, but I also have it built in for the camera. And that's important too, to really kind of pinpoint where you are. It can give you an idea of like what depth water the animals are traveling over. Killer whales often along the drop-offs.
I know that we have endless questions.
Yes.
For Lisa's expert break, but
Yeah.
I'm gone over tonight, so I just want to wrap up. And if you have extra time and you guys want to come and ask questions,
Yep.
that would be great. And we'll make sure to share your email address and any books that she recommends. We'll definitely share the chats too. So.
Yeah, I'm an educator. I love questions. I do. So I'm more than happy to. You're welcome.